By mid-2011, my husband was still in the Army and I was a stay-at-home mother trying to figure out how to be a parent. Our son was young, money was tight, life was that particular kind of exhausting that comes from building something from scratch while sleep deprived. But the spiritual questions didn't stop just because I was changing diapers. I was still connected to the online community I had been part of since high school, and the forum my friend had signed me up for after the angel encounter, the one that had collected people from all kinds of religious backgrounds, Christians, pagans, people on the left-hand path, Satanists, just all kinds of people coexisting. That community had become a lifeline over the years. They were the people I could talk to about things no one else would understand, and I was struggling. I couldn't find a church. I had tried in Hawaii, I had tried in Okinawa, and every time something felt off. Wrong fit, wrong theology, wrong energy. I wanted to follow God. I truly did, but I couldn't find a community that could hold the weight of my experiences. So I started wondering about the gods again. Not in a maybe I should go back to them way, but more like examining them, thinking about how they had toyed with us in Okinawa and how I had just let it happen. How Flint's ceremonies always seemed to invite chaos, and how even the Samhain ritual, as carefully as I had tried to structure it, felt like we were playing with forces that didn't have our best interests at heart. I needed to talk with someone who understood both worlds. So there was a man online named Mac. His name was Michael. He'd been a mentor to me prior to my time in Okinawa, and I always kept up with him. What made him different from most people I knew was that we shared the same strange position. We both acknowledged the existence of other gods, but we both wanted to follow the God of the Bible. And honestly, he was doing that better than me. That's not a common stance. Most Christians I've met either denied that other spiritual beings existed altogether, including demons, still can't figure that one out, or they were so afraid of them that they couldn't engage with the questions I was asking. Michael could do both. He knew the other gods were real, and he had still chosen to follow the God of the Bible. So I asked him the question that had been gnawing at me. Why do you choose God over the other gods? His answer was simple. Because God actually demonstrated that he cares about humanity. I sat with that for a long time, thinking about it. The other gods I had encountered, they wanted worship, they wanted service, they wanted to be fed, acknowledged, obeyed. Some of them offered power in return, some offered knowledge, some offered protection, so long as you stayed useful to them. But care, genuine concern for humans flourishing. I thought about the stories I knew, Inkai and Inanna, the Mesopotamian gods I had chosen to work with as a teenager. Even though the story said that Inkai was a friend of man, honestly, him and Inanna, they had their own agendas. The spirits of Okinawa, ancient, layered, demanding respect, but offering little in return beyond coexistence. And then from a new connection, Holden. I was learning that the Norse gods demanded loyalty and strength. And then I thought about the God of the Bible. Yes, sure, the Old Testament was violent. Yes, there were parts that made me very deeply uncomfortable. But Michael's framing helped me see something I had missed before. Humanity needed God to help point them towards good, even when that meant warring against his own firstborn, the nation of Israel, in order to achieve it. The violence wasn't arbitrary cruelty. It was a parent wrestling with children who kept running towards destruction. Now, having been in the military, I could see a strategic God who, much like any other person during the days of old, had to accept that not all of their children could survive. A king that had to make decisions to protect the kingdom. And then God did something none of the other gods ever did. He became human. He suffered. He died. Not to gain power, not to feed on worship, but to demonstrate once and for all that he cared enough to enter into the mess with us, and that the sacrifice meant something different too. It wasn't just about sacrificing for our sins, but sacrificing so that we could see our sins on full display. If we didn't have the visual of how awful we were, we wouldn't truly be able to see that we needed to work out the internal conflict of good and evil. That conversation made things click into place in ways I never considered and never had heard from other Christian believers. If the churches weren't working, if I couldn't find a community that fit, then maybe I needed to stop looking outward first. Maybe I needed to read the Bible for myself, figure it out on my own, build my own relationship before trying to find the people who shared it. So that's what I started doing. In 2012, something happened that I had been trying to wait for years to be able to do. The online community I'd been part of since high school had offline gatherings. People would travel from all over to meet face to face, finally putting bodies to the usernames they'd known for years. I always wanted to attend one, but never had the opportunity. So that year, I finally made it. It was pretty surreal, meeting people I'd only known through screens. Some of them I'd talked with for over a decade. And then there was Holden, a Norse pagan who followed Thor and Odin. We had countless conversations online about theology, ethics, and the nature of gods. And there was then Spencer, someone I wasn't particularly fond of, but who was a part of the community. Well, at some point during the gathering, I mentioned to Holden that I had been having issues with my third eye. Same problems that had started after the Kadena tree incident in Okinawa. Anytime someone pointed at my forehead, I'd get dizzy. Sometimes I'd pass out. Well, Spencer overheard it. He believed he could help because his practice involved Reiki, a form of energy healing, and he thought he could unblock whatever was causing the problem. I had my doubts, but I agreed to let him try. Holden stood nearby watching. Spencer's idea of helping was to push as much Reiki energy as he could directly through my third eye. Looking back at that now, I'm not so certain that that's actually Reiki, or at least whoever told him that he was practicing it didn't teach him right. But either way, my body started to convulse. Across the field, another person in the community, Gabriel, felt what was happening and he rushed towards us. But Holden got to Spencer first. I mean, he was right there. So he shoved Spencer off of me and immediately started working to stabilize my energy. Spencer then took the rebuke seriously, later on at least, and he acknowledged that he needed to go back and study Reiki more before attempting anything like that again. Still, the event was done. My third eye didn't heal, and there wasn't a change. It's just something that happened. But I tell you this mostly to introduce Gabriel and Holden, because in the next episode, they become rather important figures. And actually, I need to pause here and tell you something I realized while writing this. I mentioned earlier in the story that when I was confirmed Catholic at the age of 10, I couldn't remember which archangel I chose as my confirmation saint. It was either the Archangel Michael or it was the Archangel Gabriel. Now, the church didn't record it and my memory was unclear, but a couple of years ago, I did realize that Gabriel shared the name of one of those archangels. And now, writing this episode, I realize Michael, the mentor who helped me understand why to choose God, shares the other name. Now, I don't know what to make of that. Maybe it's a coincidence. Maybe God has a sense of humor. Maybe he was placing signposts along my path that I wouldn't recognize until I looked back. But I can't ignore it. I'm almost positive I'm not supposed to ignore it. In fact, so much so that I have changed the names of everybody in my story with the exception of mine, Gabriel's, and Michael's. So that's my acknowledgement that maybe I'm not supposed to ignore that. Anyways, that connection just felt important and I thought I'd put it in here. So fast forward, to the next year, 2013. I hosted the gathering this time. One of the events was a ceremony called a blot. It's a Norse ritual. My friend Warden was the one that led it. The purpose was to spiritually name our weapons of choice. People brought all kinds of things: Tai Chi swords, ritual knives. My husband brought his gun, which, is probably the most American thing he could have done. And I brought a staff I had gotten at a Renaissance festival years earlier. Now, I didn't know it then, and it wouldn't occur to me for another 8 years, but that staff is actually a shepherd's crook. I just thought it was a really cool walking stick. So, during the ceremony, I watched as a friend got frustrated with the gods and gave him because they gave him a shard of glass from a broken beer bottle to work with. Something about his reaction just sparked something in me. I was tired of the gods' games, tired of the spiritual noise that never stopped, tired of feeling pulled in directions I didn't want to go. And when it was my turn, I didn't ask for a blessing. I didn't request power or protection. I named the staff as a weapon against the gods. And I told them, all of them, that if they ever came before me again, I would use it against them. I made it very clear. I wanted to put all my faith in God and move forward. I was done with them. And the response was immediate. The spiritual chatter went silent. For the first time in years, their requests and presences and impressions just stopped. The gods, it seemed, had heard me. So I tried a couple of churches after that, still couldn't connect with anything. So I kept studying the Bible on my own, trying to find my footing. My third eye still didn't heal, but at least the noise was gone. Still, we were struggling, and that's the reality of life after military service when you don't have a clear path forward. My husband got out, and we were trying to figure out how to survive on close to minimum wage while raising a child. I tried to solve it the way I knew how, and I enlisted again, though this time with a different branch. Seemed like the logical choice. Stable income, benefits, structure. Well, that lasted about a year. Family circumstances forced an honorable discharge, and suddenly we were worse off than before. We had to move, and we landed in the only place we could afford. Everything was about to get much, much harder. I am Alethea, and this is Wandering Sinai.